Sunday with Lewis Goodall on LBC. Call 0345 6060973.
Time is 10:53. Now, on this show, obviously, we cover all of the political issues of the day with our interviewees, but now and again, try and do it as much as we can every week, try and shine a spotlight and focus on a story, a big political story, doubtless that many of you are familiar with, but which is getting insufficient attention in the national media. One of those, something that I've followed and reported on for a long time, is the ongoing scandal around leasehold and leasehold reform, something that this government promised it was going to do in their manifesto when they came to office. Needless to say, progress has been a little bit more limited in the last 6 months. Harry Scoffin is founder of, a founder of Free Leaseholders. Harry, tell us a little bit more about what the government said it would do and where we've got to.
Well, first of all, thanks for covering this story, because a lot of the media aren't, the lobby journalists, there's just not the interest and also the knowledge there. But basically, Labour started very positively. It was in the manifesto in an otherwise tight-lipped document. It was a core commitment in their platform at the general election. Then we were so shocked and pleased that in the King's speech, they made a series of commitments, and the key one was that they would move quickly. Labour would move quickly to switch on a piece of legislation that they supported in the wash-up before the last election that was famously pushed by Michael Gove. And then they were going to be bringing forward a commonhold bill. Now, unfortunately, they then sort of U-turned in November, and they said it's all very complicated and it's a whole of Parliament commitment. Now, for your listeners, that means 4 to 5 more years. And for our supporters, that's 4 to 5 more years.
It's something that Angela Rayner actually said she was going to do within 100 days when I asked her about it on this show.
Well, correct. That was the original position, and then they U-turned on that just before the election, scraping the barnacles off the boat. But the thing is, our supporters can't wait 4 to 5 more years of being looted in our homes.
What do they need to wait for 4 to 5 more years for?
Well, all the governments say it's complicated, and the fact is, it's only as complicated as you want to make it. And the fact is, we've had men on the moon. We can get rid of a man-made legal structure that is robbing people.
And just zoom out a bit, Harry. For people who aren't familiar with it, what exactly is the nature of the problem? Why is it that the government or the then opposition pledged to sort it out? Also, the old government did as well, but haven't done so. Just explain the sort of plight and situation that people are in.
Well, it's a uniquely English establishment scam. So basically, we're unique in the world. When you buy, it's normally a flat, sometimes houses as well. But when you buy a flat, you don't own it outright. And you share the property with a landlord. So you've got a mortgage out on something that when you redeem that mortgage, you will not own a single brick. It's not bricks and mortar ownership. And you've got a landlord who sees the home as a cash machine. And you've got crazy issues of service charges, ground rent, insurance commissions or kickbacks. Every which way they try to milk you. And successive governments have promised to get rid of this thing. I can go back to Margaret Thatcher, way before I was born, wanting to bring in commonhold, which is kind of a system that they used around the world, including in Scotland. And yet, what happens is money talks, Lewis. The rich people buy the influence in our political system and the can gets kicked. And I'm really worried, our supporters are worried, that that's exactly what's happening under this Labour government.
And to be clear, people are struggling because one of the problems is, there's lots of problems with it, but one of the problems is this question around ground rent. One of the problems is question around the service charges that people get. And people have no choice but to pay them, right? So you sort of get to the end of the year and the freeholder comes along and says, oh, well, actually, it's going to be an extra grand a year or an extra $2,000 a year, whatever it is. And there's really no means of kind of arbitrating that or trying to mitigate it, and you just have to pay it.
And they used to say, take back control. I think Labour even appropriated that slogan. They want to give everyone control except over our own homes, money and lives. That's wrong. And the fact is, Hamptons last year found that leaseholders are paying in flats a staggering £7.6 billion. Now, they talk about growth. They've got a bit of cheek. What about some of that money going into the real economy? Because at the moment, it's being salted offshore. What about people having children, putting money into a business? We can't have growth when people are putting all this money, our money, into their pockets. It's wrong.
I suppose what they say is, I know this is what they say. They say that, very often freeholders and so the freeholds on properties and service charges and so on, they're all bound up in different financial schemes. They're bound up in pension schemes. If you start to unpick it and unravel it, then it could have all sorts of unintended consequences. What do you say to that?
They talk about their human rights. What about our human rights? They talk about expropriation. What about expropriating us every single day with kickbacks and commissions? And you know what? Freeholders, they only own 2.5% capital value in a block of flats. The leaseholders paid a premium for their homes. And that's not me saying that. That is the leading freeholder lobby group, the Residential Freehold Association. And that information is so embarrassing, they had to whip it off their website. So actually, let's actually have some political conviction. I think people are sick of politics where there's no bravery, where there isn't standing up to the vested interests.
And of course, there's a big generational part of this, right? And I think this is one of the reasons it doesn't get as much coverage as it should, is because, in the newspapers, newspaper editors and so on, dominated by, often older people. And, look how many articles we get about house prices. Look how many we get about that. How many do we get about this? And that's because I think it's because very often people who are in flats and leasehold flats, they're younger people.
100%. So the majority of people buying leasehold flats today are first-time buyers, and it's the first rung of the property ladder, and it's completely toxic. And I know you've got many centrist dads and mums listening in, and I would urge
Hello
them.
to all of you.
I would urge them not to support the kids with the deposit. Do not put the money towards a leasehold flat purchase, because it will be the biggest financial mistake of your life and your kids' life. It doesn't set them up for financial security. And wait until we get common hold, which is what Labour promised. And we'll be fighting them every step of the way and working with them too to deliver that. And I think one last thing I really want to make clear is that there is this wider political story going on at the moment about Lord Hermer and the Attorney General. The Times newspaper reported a few days ago that Labour MPs now are concerned that his legal opinions are going to have a chilling effect on leasehold reform. And I was just in the High Court this week. The government brought, against the guided missiles of the freeholders, a bow and arrow. They don't seem serious about this.
Harry Scoffin there, founder of Free Leaseholders. I'll definitely be putting that to ministers, particularly the housing minister, when we have him here.